This story takes place in the Star Wars Factions universe, a machinima series where all timelines and factions are put into one, creating an all-out war and conflict. It is advised that before listening to this audiobook, that you have at least watched until episode 12 of Star Wars Factions. A link to the Star Wars Factions cinematic series can be found in the description down below. Please enjoy. For the young clone Torza, the planet of Trandoshan was one full of new smells and sounds. Of course, he was familiar with the Trandoshan species from his lessons back at the academy, often ridiculed for their primitive nature, but respected for their ability to hunt. But never in a million light years did he think he would be setting foot on their home planet. The Republic had declared war on the Empire after an incident involving the deaths of Republican officials at the hands of Imperial troops. Torza remembered the briefing, and how all his fellow clones held in their excitement. He knew that they had been wanting to go to war with the Imperial faction for a very long time. The incident involving the officials eventually led to riots in their main capital of Coruscant. Not many clones were present during those riots, at least not the ones from a normal stature. It was mainly a brawl between the civilians, thugs, police, and Senate guards. And even before setting foot on Trandoshan, a planet in the same system as Kashyyyk, which was Torza's next destination, their main fleet, under lead of Commander Cody, had clashed with a large fleet of Imperial Star Destroyers. Torza was stationed on a Venator coming in with the second wave, meaning his ship did not get involved in any action. Torza just watched the battle from his cabin's window. It was like a small little light show, like the ones done by foreign performers in the entertainment districts in his beloved Coruscant. Though the infantry itself did not get involved during the battle, he envied the clones in the first wave a bit, as they got to experience the thrill and exhilaration of combat ambiance. Torza had two friends serving on some of the ships during the first wave. One was an artillery gunner by the name of Bellius, and the other, an ARC-170 fighter pilot called Adjust. He had not heard from them yet, but he looked forward to hearing their exciting stories and adventures during the battle. After the initial confrontation with the Empire was a success, a blockade near Kashyyyk was created, and the second and third wave were rerouted towards Trandoshan to prepare for transports towards the insertion point on Kashyyyk. With so many AA turrets and heavy guns in the vicinity on Kashyyyk, it was chosen to attack via sea by naval invasion. Some were surprised that the Trandoshans agreed with allowing the Republic access to their planet. It was known throughout the galaxy how much the Trandoshans and the Wookiees, native of the nearby Kashyyyk, hated each other. But that hatred was nothing compared to the Trandoshans' love for credits, and the Jedi Council had agreed to pay a considerable sum in exchange for access. This did not sit well among some of the clones, as they feared, rightfully so, that part of those credits would surely find its way eventually towards the Hutt Cartel and other groups throughout the galaxy. But the clones were specifically ordered not to displease the local inhabitants of Trandoshan. Its swamps and forests were thick and the air was hot. Insects the size of one's hand buzzed all around you, making any man lose his mind after a good while. Though the clones were ordered to stay within the perimeter of the established base and landing zone, it was inevitable that contact with local Trandoshans would be made. Rather than the clones seeking them out, it were the Trandoshans coming to the landing zone, in order to barter with the clones for trinkets and game claimed during one of their hunts. As Torza made his way alongside the perimeter fence, a Trandoshan, brown of scale with deep lines and scars across his face, stuck out his hand through the fence and offered something that resembled a bat-like creature with 7 wings. He growled at Torza, but did not make the impression of wanting something hurtful to befall upon him. It was clear to him that the Trandoshan wanted to trade for this creature, whatever it was, that he caught during his hunt for credits or other things. Torza was not interested, and waved the Trandoshan off. He could see, though, that other clones seemed easier to persuade, and a line of the white armored troopers had formed at the fence as arms and hands opened and closed, confirming transaction and trade. One of these, to Torza's surprise, was his buddy Urza, with whom he shared the same cabin aboard the Venator. Urza was handing over some of his own credits to the tiny Trandoshan with an eager look on his pale green face. The reptilian humanoid seemed laughing, rather pleased, and he gave Torza the opportunity to notice that it was missing quite a few teeth from its gaping mouth. The Trandoshan stuffed Urza's hand full of tiny golden brown sticks. It seemed to resemble some sort of baked pastry and was clearly edible. Urza nodded to the Trandoshan and turned around, spotting Torza in the process. Seeing his friend made his face light up. "Torza!" he screamed while holding up his hand, as if the notion of the two looking at each other did not acknowledge the fact that they both had already been spotted. He came running at Torza. "Here, look at this!" he said as he enthusiastically held up the golden stick-shaped pastries near Torza's nose. The smell of the sticks did not resemble that of a pastry at all, but it was not of an unpleasant smell either. Urza's enthusiastic movement resulted in a few sticks falling on the ground. "Not so close," Torza said, laughing to calm his friend down. "I saw you buying this from the reptile. What is it?" Silence was drawn for a moment. I don't know," Urza said. "But I'm pretty sure it's food. The Trandoshan demonstrated it by signaling to put it in its mouth. Besides, if you look around you, all of these other reptiles are offering meat, spices, and other similar things. Except for that one." Urza pointed to a corner of the fence where a lone Trandoshan was yelling at anyone getting close while holding up two large hides, still dripping with blood at the bottom. It was clear that this Trandoshan was not actually a hunter, but instead hastily skinned the closest animals he could find to offer to the foreigners visiting their planet. None were interested. "Is it any good?" Torza asked hesitantly. "I don't know. I haven't tried it yet." Torza sighed. "Then why would you buy it?" As Urza put one of the sticks in his mouth, he began to chew loudly as he tried to speak at the same time. "Well, it's not as if we get the chance to visit a planet like Trandosha every day. We'll be leaving in a few moments, so I might as well take the chance to try out some of the local delicacies. Of which you don't know the name," Torza teased while laughing. While looking at the sticks, Urza got a pleasant look on his face. "You know, these aren't half that bad. They taste a bit buttery, but also has a bit of bitterness to it. Would you like to try?" "I'll pass," Torza said, and he noticed from the corner of his eye that the clone commander was signaling the infantry over to board transport ships. He nodded towards Urza to acknowledge this. Urza's happy expression changed into a serious one within a second, as he put the food he bought inside a small pocket on his belt. Torza grabbed his white clone helmet tight as they both increased their walking pace, as a group of white armored soldiers gathered around a bunch of crates that the officer was standing on. "Alright troopers, listen up," the officer yelled. "We just received orders that you clones will attack the beaches of Kashyyyk with the second wave. You will enter the landing vehicles at the same time as the first wave and wait for the signal to approach. We expect heavy resistance due to the Empire knowing we're here. You will be briefed on your way to Kashyyyk on the transports. Listen to your captains, and you will come out of this alive. Good luck, troopers." The group started to scuffle and slowly expand as clone troopers walked hesitantly towards the transports. It was a bit chaotic, as different groups and divisions were aligned to various areas and landing strips. Torza had remembered that they were to assemble at landing pad B-25. As Torza and Urza walked towards the landing pad, Torza got tipped on the shoulder. It was Ronan, another friend that they both shared their cabin with. Ronan seemed very excited about going into battle. "Are you guys ready to kill some Imperials?" He stomped Urza in the shoulder as a way to show his enthusiasm. "I don't know. You seem way too hyped up. Don't be anywhere near me if we need to go stealth, because the enemy will hear you all the way from over here in Trandosha," Urza said, laughing. The remark made Torza smile as well. The truth was that Torza was excited to go into battle too. He just did not show it externally as much as Ronan did. This is what they all had trained for all these years. Ever since they were children, they were taught how to fight, kill, and defend themselves. This time, they were sent out to another planet and fight the oppressor. This was their crusade. Torza knew that not many clones saw it this way, but he always dreamed about the thrill of combat and the stories that it brought with it to tell friends and travelers in places where strong beverages fueled storytelling. As the three clones were approaching the transports, they all three put on their helmets. On the ramp leading into the transport, Torza saw Nemuro, another clone he was close with. Nemuro did not have his helmet on, and seemed to be searching for someone. When he saw Torza and the two others heading his way, he signaled for Torza to come over to him. Torza, Urza, and Ronan signaled to each other that they would talk again once they would be on Kashyyyk, and Urza and Ronan disappeared into the transport. "What is it?" Torza asked, surprising, without taking off his helmet. Nemuro's voice was deep and serious. "You said that Adjust was a friend of yours?" Nemuro did not directly look Torza's way. Torza was a bit surprised by his sudden question. "The ARC pilot?" "Yeah, he's a good friend." Nemuro let out a huge sigh. "His co-pilot, Kagari, was a friend of mine. I just heard that they had been shot down during the battle above Kashyyyk." Without waiting for a reaction, Nemuro headed into the transport as well. No sound came out of Torza's mouth, and his posture and helmet hid his actual reaction to this news. That one clone that he had shared stories, drinks, and experiences with was dead. News of the clone victory during the battle above Kashyyyk made it seem impossible for Torza that any of his friends would have died back there. He never knew. All this time he was anticipating getting reunited and hearing about all the TIE fighters and defenders that he had shot down, but instead, it was him that was laid to ash. War brings casualties, and Torza was well aware that he would likely lose friends during these conflicts, but he was surprised to find out that he lost the first of his friends in battle, of which he himself was not a part of. Torza looked one last time around him to get a final glimpse of Trandoshan, and then headed into the transport as well, as the last preparations were made for takeoff. As Torza walked towards his seat, several clone troopers yelled out loud, signaling they were ready for combat. Torza sat down in his designated seat and strapped himself in. He caught a glimpse of Ronan, who signaled to him with a thumbs up. Torza knew that he could not be thinking about other things than the battle that lay in front of him. He returned the gesture with a thumbs up as well. As he could feel the ship moving under the rumble of the engine, a countdown was given, and with a loud roar, the ship headed off towards the destination of Kashyyyk. You could clearly distinguish the clones who were excited and ready for battle, and the ones who were nervous. Torza looked along the sitting clones, and realized that some of these, maybe many of them, he would never see again. Maybe the same would count for Ronan, who Torza now was fixated on again. Ronan's body language seemed uncomfortable, as he had his head leaned back in his seat. Torza now remembered that Ronan did not like flying and got easily sick. That notion of thought made Torza laugh a bit. As the rumbling of the ship calmed down as they left the planet's atmosphere, the voice of their captain, Captain Seraph, echoed through the sound output within everyone's helmet. He explained in finer detail the plan of the naval invasion. Torza and his fellow clones would be launching during the second wave. The first being done by clones in first-generation armor, supported by TX-130s, ATTEs, ATRTs, and ATXTs. That sounded like a lot of firepower to many of the clones. Seraph reminded everyone that there was little to no cover on that beach, and that the clones, both infantry and inside the vehicles, were easy targets. It was expected that the enemy would have set up turrets alongside the shore, ranging from static infantry turrets to heavy gun towers. It was also possible they would have light armor like ATSTs, though not many of these were expected, due to the Imperials also having the disadvantage of lacking cover at the same time. The infantry's priority was to take out the stormtroopers bunched up behind the barricades, and set up a point of assembly where waves 3 and 4 could be sent once they arrive on the beach. Seraph said that it was unlikely that wave 1 would be able to do this. The clones in the TX-130s, Urza was one of those, would focus on infantry turrets and light armor being the priority in that case. They were to refrain from engaging with enemy towers due to the strength of their shield. The TX-130 should be nimble and small enough to where it would avoid fire from those towers, but rather needed to be careful of blasters from ATSTs. Heavier armor, like the ATXTs and ATTEs, would focus on bigger static turrets and the towers. It was assumed that the towers would need to be shot multiple times before giving in, and it was recommended for the pilots of the ATXTs to keep moving, as they were not as well armored as their ATTE counterparts. The ATRTs, of which Ronan piloted one, would concentrate on covering the infantry and firing at and suppressing held-up enemies behind the barricades. Their higher angle made it easier for them to get a good shot in. They were advised to mainly watch out for enemy infantry fire in general, as they were so small and quick that no enemy armor should pose a threat. Torza concentrated on the words of Seraph and realized he was sweating. The words and explanation of the captain made everything seem so vivid. This was it. The battle was about to begin, and everyone had to do their part, both infantry and armor. Torza himself was regular infantry, and would be in one of the regular naval landing craft, while Nemuro and Stock, another friend who Torza had missed to spot back on Trandoshan, were both positioned on a troop transport walker. As the transport ship made its way close to Kashyyyk, the cheers and yelling made way for silence as everyone suddenly started to realize that things were about to get serious. As the clones were entering Kashyyyk's atmosphere, Ceres spoke once more. "Realize that this is the battle the whole galaxy will talk about, troopers. Think of the people back home. They are all watching and following the events happening on Kashyyyk by the minute. We are making history here." This small pep talk earned a few more yells and cheers from several clone troopers before the ship started rumbling again as its landing gear got extended and the brakes were activated. After the transport had landed, the clones were ordered to stay seated until the hatches opened and the ramps extended. The clacking sound of the clones' armor as they all stood up roamed throughout the transport. As Torza descended the ramp, he was blinded by light as Kashyyyk was much brighter than Trandoshan. They were situated on a small island surrounded by crystal clear water that danced elegantly with the nice breeze that was present. Where Trandoshan was much more cluttered and dense with its forests and swamps, Kashyyyk partially was open with its many small islands before descending into thick forestry with trees the size of buildings. The sight could only be described as majestic. It would still take a few minutes until the clones would be sent to their point of takeoff. More transports needed to land first before this could be done. A simple glance up into the sky revealed hundreds of dropships and transports descending from orbit to add more strength to the clone army. ATTEs were dropped via smaller transports as well, and TX-130s were released from containers. Everywhere you looked, armor and manpower was being moved. Torza remembered the immense feeling of this invasion back in Coruscant, when all the clones marched towards the acclimators to be sent out. But this was of a whole different caliber. It had a much more aggressive feel to it, with the army of the Republic showcasing their muscles. It would now not be long before Torza and his fellow clone troopers would be attacking the beaches on Kashyyyk.